Good afternoon.
Hello,
Welcome,
everybody.
welcome to GSTZen's webinar. I have with me CA Venugopal Gella and I am Suriya Subramanian. In this webinar, we will cover the practical aspects of filing GSTR-9 Annual Return through the government portal as well as through GSTZen. We will cover the details of the return, what's in the form, that will be a brief overview, how to download data from the government portal, how to review your last year's data, and how to punch in data for the GSTR-9 return, and how to upload tables 17, 18, other details, and finally how to submit the return. Over to CA Venugopal.
Yeah, thank you, Suriya. So, I'm sure everyone are eagerly looking at GSTR-9 over time. And from since September, where the form has gone live in the month of March, we have seen two notifications and the latest notification number 74, which has given the revised form GSTR-9. So, in this session, we are looking at having again an overview of GSTR-9. I'm sure most of you are aware of all the fields in the GSTR-9, but before we go through the entire GSTR-9, I think we should have a quick overview of the form and what are the various options that are available for filing the GSTR-9. There is an online mode, offline mode. What features are there on the GSTZen? How do we use those features? And how do we review the report and edit the data before we start filing? We would look at that. And lastly, we will look at how do we submit and file the returns. So this is the agenda which we are covering. All right. And as you're watching this, if you have any doubts, you can also put your queries. So we will be answering as and when we can. Okay, coming to the annual returns and the audit. So we all know annual returns are applicable to every registered person. So which means GSTR-9, everyone who is a registered person who is regularly registered has to file GSTR-9. In case if someone has opted for the composition scheme, they would be filing GSTR-9A, and e-commerce operator, though it is not live yet for the 2017-18, since the provisions came into effect only from 1st October 2018, so they would be filing a return additionally GSTR-9B. Then I said the audit that would be required if the turnover in the previous financial year is exceeding 2 crores. So for 17-18, if the turnover exceeds the 2 crores, then they would be filing additionally GSTR-9C. However, the annual returns are not applicable for someone who is an input service distributor, a casual taxable person, non-resident taxable person, and the TDS returns. So annual returns are not applicable. The due date of the annual return is generally December of the subsequent financial year. However, the form got released late onto the portal, so the due date for the financial year 2017-18 is 30th June 2019 as of now, and this has been notified by order number 3/2018. So let's get an overview of what is there in the annual return. So in today's session, we are going to have a complete picture of how we will be filing the annual return and what are the data that needs to be filled. Broadly, if one looks at the annual return GSTR-9, it is divided into 6 parts and 19 tables and a very beautifully drafted form. So the part 1 is about the basic information of the person who is filing the annual return. So the table 1 to 3 contains the basic information about the person who is filing the annual return. A very important part in the annual return is part 2, which is talking about liability. So part 2 has two tables, table 4 and table 5. Table 4 would contain all the details of liability, which could be outward supplies or inward supplies which are applicable for reverse charge. So part 2 has the details of the liability. It also has the details of the total turnover. So the table 5 captures the other turnover which is not taxable, exempted, where the GST is not applicable. So consolidated table 4 and 5 would comprise of the total liability and the turnover. Part 3 is about input tax credit. So it has 3 tables, table 6, 7 and 8. Table 6, we furnish the information of the total input tax credit, and table 7, we furnish the information of the input tax credit which is reversed, and table 8 is about a reconciliation with GSTR 2A. Now, it is logical that after my liability and input tax credit, to assess what is the tax paid details, what is the tax liability, what is taxable, tax payable, and what is tax paid. So part 4 of GSTR 9 captures the information of tax payable and paid. However, there are chances that some information of the last year, which is of financial year 2017-18, would have got missed out, and that missed out data has to get reported in the subsequent periods of GSTR 1 or GSTR 3B, owing to Circular 26 by 2017. The last circular of 2017 has a provision how do we correct or amend the missed out data. Now, if any corrections of the previous financial year is being done, that gets reported in table 10 to 14 of part 5, which is GSTR 9 part 5. Apart from, so with this, technically, the reporting for GSTR 9 completes subject for the liability and the credits. However, there is an other information which is asked for in part 6, that is table 15 to table 19. So there are 5 tables where miscellaneous information, though which is not creating additional liability, but an information which is required. This is a broad overview of GSTR 9. Now, when one logs into the portal, they would look at that the moment on login, they would on the welcome screen, you would find this annual return button. So you log into the portal, you would find the annual return button, and you click onto the annual return button. So you will be having an option to select the financial year for which you are filing, and you have an option for prepare online, prepare offline. So currently the portal is ready with the prepare online. Prepare offline version would also be available very soon. So let's look at today. In today's session, we would explain you how to do prepare online and prepare offline also, which is going to come soon. All right. So when I click on prepare online, these are the tiles that are available on the portal. So various parts, various forms, various tables which I have explained in the earlier screen. So the table 4 is talking about the details of advances, inward supplies, outward supplies made during the financial year on which tax is payable. So table 4 is the tax payable turnover. Table 5 is the turnover outward supplies on which tax is not payable. So it's a turnover on which tax is not liable. Then you have table 6 where the input tax credit availed, 7 input tax credit reversed, and 8 reconciliation of input tax credit with 2A and other information. The table 9 is 4 plus 5 plus 6 minus 7. So adjustment of it, how I have discharged my tax. What is tax payable? How much of the tax has been paid through cash? How much of it has been paid through ITC would be available on the face of it. This is how the portal would give a glimpse of it. Apart from that, the other tables are also available. So the table 10 to table 18 is available. Table 19 is the information about the late fee. In case the form is submitted late, the late fee gets calculated. So at this point, what information needs to be furnished is table till table 18. Now, let's look at the in a detailed view of each and every table before we get on to the GSTZen, filling up the data onto the GSTZen. We should also have a broad idea as to what is the information that needs to be obtained or that needs to be filled into each of the table. So as I said, the part 2 very critical table where it captures the details of the outward and some inward supplies where the liability is payable. So part 2 have transactions which have tax implication in table 4, the transactions which do not have tax implications in table 5. Table 4 is broadly divided into lot of subtables which you can correlate with the data which is being filed in GSTR1. So table 4 is 4A to 4M, which is the total, and 4N, where the information is bifurcated. 4A to 4E is taxable outward supplies made during the year. So the taxable outward supplies made during the year could be to unregistered customers, which is B2C, reported in table 4A, could be to a registered person, B2B, reported in table 4B. Please note, this reporting is happening at a gross level. So there is no a detailed data entry the way which is done in GSTR1 is not expected in GSTR9. In GSTR9, it is a consolidated value of the data which has been reported. So there could also be exports with pay and SEZ supplies with pay, which is reported in 4C and 4D, and deemed exports, which is reported in 4E. Now, exports without pay doesn't get reported in table 4 since it do not have any tax liability. Table 4 is only the details of turnover which has tax liability. Apart from outward supplies, so the table 11 of GSTR1 where we report the advances is reported in table 4F of GSTR9. Then all inward supplies which are subject to reverse charge, both 93, 94, 53, 54, all the inward supplies where the registered taxpayer has the liability to pay the taxes is reported in 4G. Please note, GSTR9 reporting is always at a gross level. What I mean at a gross level, if I have reported any invoice and issued a credit note or a debit note, in table 4B, I would be reporting the 100 rupees, the full value, and the invoice assuming from 100 corrected to 80 by way of a credit note, the value of credit note gets reported in 4I. So the first section 4A to 4E is a gross reporting, and the debit notes and credit notes are reported in 4I and 4J. Apart from debit note and credit note, there could also have been some amendments that would have happened in the past where a value reported erroneously a wrong figure which is corrected to a different figure. So that gets reported in 4K and 4L. Now, this information, it appears that okay, it is a tedious work to do again for the annual return purpose. Since the data is already available once, why the same has to be reported again? A question that might come up. But when you log into the portal and you would automatically find the data of the values of table 4 is already filled in. So it's not that you would have to fill in the data again. The data is already filled in into the table 4. Now, if the data is already filled in, what is the work which we would have to do it? Now, if you look at the instructions of the table 4, the table 4 requires the details to be furnished of the aggregate value of the supplies made to various respective people in 4A unregistered, 4B registered, on which taxes have been paid. So you have to bifurcate the taxes which are paid in GSTR 3B, the manner in which it has been discharged. Sometimes there would be a difference between GSTR1 and GSTR 3B. So as a taxpayer, you have an obligation to reconcile the differences between GSTR1 and GSTR 3B. What is auto-populated on the portal is the data which is submitted in GSTR1. But this data might be erroneous owing to some taxes not paid or wrongly paid. So that is where the auto-populated data which has been done on the portal is only a draft form. If you see the heading, it would be mentioned as the draft form, and it needs to be manually corrected. And the reason for correction is what is given in the instructions, where it says the turnover to be reported is where the turnover on which taxes has been paid. So in the course of furnishing that information, the portal also gave an instruction saying the details of form GSTR-1 may be used for filing. That is the reason the details of GSTR-1 has been auto-populated by the portal and given to us. What we are seeing here is the summary of the table 4. But when you click on this tile, you will automatically see the details. The details are automatically available on the portal. Now, if you are seeing here, there is a table 4B, supplies made to a B2B, table 4A, supplies made to a B2C. So these details, whatever you are seeing here on the screen, is auto-populated by the portal, and these are editable. If for some reason you feel that this data is wrong and the taxes have not been fully paid, you have an option to correct the same even on the portal or in any of the third-party utility like GSTZen. A point to note is if this auto-reported value, where in our example, zero rated supply on payment of tax is reported as 15,000 rupees and the tax on that is reported as 2,700. In case if this value is different, then the portal would also show with a color code. If the difference is exceeding 20%, which is if 15,000 is corrected as 17,000, which is no issue, but if the 15,000 is corrected beyond 18,000, then this tile, which is currently graded into a gray color, would automatically become a red color, showing that okay, looks like the gap is huge. Please recorrect or please verify. Of course, it is just a warning or an information, but that do not stop you for filing the returns. Similar to 4A to 4D, all other tables are auto-populated. They are all auto-filled based on the data which has been submitted. If you notice, the inward supplies on which tax is paid on the reverse charge basis is also auto-reported. Though you are not filing this information in GSTR-1, basis the data which is there in GSTR-3B, that data has been extracted and automatically reported back into GSTR-9 by the portal. So if you notice, the portal has done the substantial work of what needs to be filed. It also has taken the values which have to be which are issued by way of credit note or by way of amendments, and owing to which in the example what we are seeing, there is a reduction in the value. A total of 5,10,000 rupees is been reduced, and 5,10,000 is reduced by 51,000, 16 lakhs reduced by 5,000, and 1671 again reduced by 5,000. So we are seeing only 16,71,000, a net figure which is 4N. What is the total liability? Moving on to next part of reporting is table 5, where you have the turnover. There is no taxes which needs to be paid. That is also auto calculate, auto presented in the portal based on the data which we submit in GSTR-1 and 3B. Summary of both table 4 and table 5 is reported in 5N where the total liability is computed. Please note the value which is reported in 5N is excluding 4G. 4G is about inward supplies on which reverse charge is payable. So 5N is what you can generally compare with your P&L account for a 9 months 2017, 1st July 2017 to 31st March. All the 9 months data or GSTR-1 or GSTR-3B data, this is something which is comparable. Moving on to next. So 4N minus 4G plus 5M is the total value of the turnover. So the taxable and exempted is captured in the summary 5N. Then input tax credit is reported in 3 tables, table 6, 7 and 8. So table 6 is the total input tax credit availed as per 3B, and not just 3B, there are input tax credit which is availed beyond 3B, transition returns ITC 0102, all that gets captured here. Table 7 is the input tax credit which is reversed. Table 8 is the reconciliation with 2A. Please note, the input tax credit which is reported in GSTR 9 is as is basis whatever which is there in 3B. There is no new credit which will be added in the GSTR 9, nor an ineligible credit which can be reversed in GSTR 9. So it is not a GSTR 9. You cannot avail a new credit nor reverse a credit which has been already availed. Then it is table 8. We have a reconciliation with GSTR 2A. So these are the tables where we are already been taking input tax credit in the past in GSTR 3B. So 4A1 is import of goods, 4A2 is import of service, 4A3 is reverse charge, 4A4 is ISD credit, and all other credits is taken in 4A5. Reversal of ITC is reported in 4B. Net ITC is auto computed. Any ineligible ITC is reported in 4D. When you log into the portal, you will be able to see all these credits into reporting in table 6 and table 7. Like, how does this show up? Please note, for you to reconcile what has to be reported is you can download your electronic credit ledger. When you download your electronic credit ledger, you have two columns. There is a first column which is date, the second column tax period. What is reported in GSTR 9 is for the values which are there in the tax period July 17 to March 18. There would be instances where you are filing a return for the month of January, February, March late, which is beyond April, beyond 31st March. Even though you file it in the month of April, this indicates this is a credit pertaining to 2017-18, and the credits have to be taken not by the transaction date, but by the transaction period or the tax period for which it belongs to. On the portal, when you look at your table 6, the table 6 is auto-populated with the input tax credit which you have availed as per GSTR 3B. However, you have also has an expectation to bifurcate the input tax credit availed. If you have noticed, we have seen in the earlier screen, 4A has 5 subtables, 4A1 to 4A5. The same information is expected by the taxpayer to be presented back again in table 6. Not just the reporting of the information, the input tax credit so availed also has to be segregated between inputs, capital goods, and input services. So the input tax credit has to be segregated into the following heads. So this is an additional requirement in GSTR 9. So one would have a challenge in segregation of these credits and reporting of these credits accordingly. So table 6 has further table where you will be reporting the 4A5 in 6B, RCM credit from registered person in 6D, unregistered person in 6C, import of goods 4A1 is reported in 6E, import of service equivalent 4A2 is reported in 6F. For input ISD credits, 4A4 is reported in 6G. During the period, there would be situations where you would have taken a credit, not paid to the vendor within the due date, you would have reversed it. Upon payment, you would have re-availed it. So to identify the credits which have been reversed and re-availed, so that that much portion of the data is not computed back by the system as an error, the re-availed data to be reported in 6H and original credit to be reported in 6B, net of 6H. In a simple example, I have taken an input tax credit of 100, of which 20 rupees is reversed because it is not availed, it is not paid to the vendor in time. But in the month of December, it is reversed and re-availed in the month of March 20 again. So your 6B would be a value with 120. But the reporting purpose in 6B, you will be reporting only 80 because the inward supplies 80 has been availed net in the last year, and 6H would be having 20. So 6B to 6H would be showing 100. However, 6A would be having 120, which is explained down as a reconciliation. But the point to note is if you are re-availing any credit which is reversed, the credit reversed which is re-availed has to be reported in 6H. Moving further, the credits I said it would not be just on account of the 3B, the credits would have moved on account of transition credits also. Tran 1, Tran 2, ITC01, ITC02. All those credits are reported from 6K, L and M. So total other credits are 6N and regular credits are 6I. So 6I is your 3B credits, 6N is other than 3B credits. So the total ITC availed is 6O. And these ITC availed which would get reversed subsequently owing to various reasons. Either the vendor not paid within 180 days, or if it is an input service distributor, there is a wrong distribution or distributed correctly, but the vendor has issued a credit note resulting in reversal of input tax credit. We also know if there are any common credits pertaining to exempted supplies that gets reversed as per rule 42, and capital goods credit gets reversed in rule 43, and any credits which are exclusively blocked or a regular credit where the credit has been availed and subsequently it becomes blocked credit, you would again reverse a credit, the credit which has been availed. So the reversals of credit is dealt in table 7. So on the portal, you have the reversals against each rule. You would be recording the value of each reversal during the year, whatever is the amount reversed, including any other reason for reversals that can be specified in 7H, and you would attribute each reversal. And if there are reasons for multiple reversals, there can be subsequent multiple columns that can be added. You would find a small plus button at the end to add multiple reasons for reversals. So going to various reasons when the credits are reversed is reported in table 7. A very important table is table 8. Table 8 is about input tax credit reconciliation. Reconciliation with what is available versus what is availed. 8A is an information of GSTR-2A. So basically table 3 and table 5 of GSTR-2A is auto-computed. As of now, if you download the portal, the values as on 28th February has been auto-computed and has been presented. Now we all know GSTR-9 due date is 30th June and the time limit for filing the corrections of GSTR-1 is till the 31st March. So the credit adjustments could further happen till up to 31st March, and if the supplier is making any correction, that would also have an impact on GSTR-2A. So if there are any furthermore corrections that have to be adjusted in GSTR-2A, one may need to await till 31st March to refresh and get the final value of GSTR-2A. Please note, the value of the 8A after 31st March would not undergo a change significantly, because the majority of the filing people would have filed the returns by 31st March. Now, whatever the data which is there in 8A is compared with whatever is the input tax credit which is availed in the earlier tab, that is 6B and 6H. So 6B and 6H is a total credits which are availed, and this has to be reported net of reversals. So 100 rupees credit, 20 reversed and 20 re-availed, it will be reported as 100 rupees only. 6B would have 80, 6H would have 20. There could be a situations where the input tax credit of the earlier period would have been availed in the current period. As of now, the portal is looking at the input tax credit of last year availed in the current year between April to September reported in 8C. Any difference owing to that could be either an input tax credit not availed or it is an ineligible credit. We have a small example to understand. If 2A is a value of 100 rupees and assuming of 100 rupees, 155 is an eligible credit and 45 is an ineligible credit. Of 155, 80 is availed in 2017-18, which gets reported in 6B, and 40 is availed in 2018-19, gets reported in 8C, and of 155, 120 I have been availed, 35 is not availed, missed out taking the credit, that gets reported in 8E, and ineligible credit 45 gets reported in 8F. This is how the 8A 200 gets reconciled. There comes a very important table, the table part 9 part 4. So table 9 part 4 would be showing tax payable and tax paid details. Now the tax payable details are completely auto calculated and made available. Please note this can be edited. This can be edited. But the tax paid through cash and through ITC, this is the transaction which has happened in the previous financial year. So much taxes have been paid. Since the taxes have been paid, which is a statement of fact, this cannot be edited. So that is why you would be finding it in a gradient color, that this have been edited, this cannot be editable. All right. So this is on the tax payable table 9. So moving on to table 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. This is a snapshot of whatever the data which is of 2017-18 we have missed out in reporting in the last financial year and reported in the current financial year is reported. However, on account of table 10 and 11, there might be a liability coming up in the current financial year. So that liability gets reported in table 14, and this also has an option to pay. So the liability may be on upside or a downside. It could be a positive number or a negative number. Both this gets reported, and the differential tax paid on account of table 10 and table 11 gets reported here. So at this point, I will pause before moving to subsequent tables. Before moving into subsequent tables, which is of other information, we will take a pause and look at how this has to be done on the GSTZen, and we will come back to this table at a relevant point. So at this point, we will see whatever we have discussed so far on the GSTZen, how do we implement it. Moving on to the portal of GSTZen.
Thank you, Venu. So we got a few questions. Should we answer them now, or can we take them later?
Yeah, so we have a question now which says the one of the question is the bill of entry in IGST is not reflected in GSTR-2A. How do we reconcile the same? And the question to say how do we reconcile, if you notice in table 8, the GSTR-2A is available for reconciliation. The table 8 had two parts, IGST credit separately and other credit separately. What is reconciled with 2A is only table 6B and table 6H. So both the table 6B and 6H do not have the details of import of the goods. So the table 6B and 6H is not compared with the other details, which is import of the goods. So 2A will not have import of goods, 6B and 6H will not have import of the goods. So there is no requirement to have it in 2A for reconciling with 6B and 6H.
There was another question about composition taxpayer.
Yeah.
What are they supposed to do, and what are we going to do for them?
Yes. So for the composition taxpayers, we have a similar return which needs to be filed, which is GSTR-9A. And even on the GSTZen portal, we are coming up with the GSTR-9A, where on the composition taxpayer can also fill and file it. So for a composition taxpayer, they will not file 9; they will be filing only 9A. But however, during the period, if they have opted from composition to the regular or regular to the composition, if there is a migration that happens, then these dealers, these registered taxpayers would be filing two returns, one GSTR-9 for the period in which they are not in composition, GSTR-9A for the period in which they are in the composition scheme. So let's also now see the how to do it on the portal.
By the way, keep your questions coming. You can ask questions either on the YouTube channel or to our WhatsApp numbers on the website shared with you. Let me go back to the screen. So what we are going to do now is start from fresh in GSTZen. In GSTZen, we are going to add a new GST number. We are going to add a new GST number. We are going to log into the government portal from GSTZen. We are going to fetch the data from the government portal, and we are going to do all of that. So let us start from here. We'll add. You can type. Yeah, we'll use various number for now. This is how you add a new GST number. Right. Yeah, so this is the home page of a particular GST number here on GSTZen. Again, you can access this from the home page. You will see the GST number that we just now added will come here, as well as the recent applicable returns, the GSTR-1, the GSTR-3B, and GSTR-9 will be available here. Okay, so here is the home page of this software in GSTZen. I'll just present a brief overview right here. So you can see links to consolidated reports for the financial years. We'll go to that very soon. You can also see a link to details of getting the electronic ledger summary. As Venu pointed out a while ago, you can walk through the electronic credit ledger to see the various entries, especially the entries of credit used in 3B as well as Tran 1, Tran 2 credits, and you can use this to populate table 6 of GSTR-9. We'll go to that soon. GSTZen also shows you a dashboard summarizing all the tax returns 1, 3B with their filing dates. So there are color coded here. So you can see there are a couple of returns are showing as late. Actually, the filing information is not available. So let me quickly fetch the latest data from the government portal. In a few seconds, you should see that this data was updated just now, and you should see that these two returns were filed. And there are links to reconciliation here, so you can go reconcile your books with the portal. Let me go directly to So before going to GSTR-9, let me quickly show the electronic credit ledger. We will log into the government portal using OTP, and these balances will get filled, and we can view the ledger details. Right. We'll wait a few seconds for us to receive the OTP, and we will log in with the OTP.
And as till we get the OTP, you may also note the data which is available in the GSTZen is data which is which can be fetched from the government portal. It would be generally difficult for us to access the data of the government portal because the data is always given a month over the month. But now if we want to get a comparative view between months or a consolidated view from YTD to till date, that data is generally not available on the government portal. Also, if you about the details which I have explained in the tiles in the earlier thing, those details on the tiles was also consolidated. It did not had any breakup. But when we use a third-party software, the details can be also known as to how this data can be, the source of the data which is coming and what it has to be. Maybe there is a OTP error. Can you just log in fresh? Yeah. So that is the usage of advantage of using. Yeah, advantage of using the GSTZen software is we would be getting the details of the data in a complete breakup. Let's now get the OTP from the portal.
Hopefully, it'll do it correct this time.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So we had typed OTP around the last time around. So here I'll select these checkboxes. There is one checkbox for getting the ITC ledger details. There is another checkbox for getting the cash ledger details. If you go to the government portal, you will have to download these details 6 months at a time. That is the maximum time period that you can provide. Here in this software, you can, with a single button, you can download the ledger details for your entire registration period. Let me I'll press this button and it will get the details in about a minute. So while this is going on, what you will notice is that after downloading these details, usually these ledger balances will be zero because at least the cash ledger will usually be zero. But if you download the Excel and then view these entries, then you can see that you can view the full history of the you can
Yeah. So if you look at this ITC ledger, I was explaining you that there are two columns. There is a transaction date and the return period. Now, it is required for the purpose of GSTR-9. You have to look at the return period July 17 to March 18. There might be a transactions of the 23rd April. The transaction date is 23rd April, but it is a March return. That is how you have to see. And in one go, you have got all the consolidated data of the input tax credits availed, used, so the debit and credit. This is the advantage of using a software GSTZen rather than trying to manually consolidate and collate. Now we will move on to the.
And the other thing is there is a description here, so you can know the reason for the credit and try to match it with the relevant tables in GSTR. Yeah. So let me fetch the other details needed for the return. I'm going to provide a brief overview of the GSTR-9 page itself. The first detail is to prepare the data. That is where you will download data from the government portal into GSTZen, review that data, we'll give that in an Excel format. This is optional, of course. This is for your own analysis. You can also download the auto-calculated return details from the government portal. And then the steps are to fill the GSTR-9 form. We'll go over that in detail. And where you'll fill tables 4 to 16. There are two additional tables, which is 17 and 18, where you are providing the summary of at the HSN level of outward supplies and inward supplies. You can upload them as Excel files. We'll go over these steps in the next half an hour. So I'm now going to download data from the government portal into GSTZen for the financial year 2017 and 18. So we have already logged into the government portal, and so in this screen we see the details that we can fetch. So you can see there are 3 tax returns shown here. One is GSTR-1, GSTR-2, GSTR-2A, and then there is GSTR-3B, and there are various sections of GSTR-1, and there is the GSTR-3B summary and various sections of GSTR-2A. We are going to download all of these, download all this data and review it now. So before doing that, let us take a look at the GSTZen Excel output itself. So this report will not have any data. It'll be an empty report, but at least let's take a look at the format of the report itself, how it looks. So there is an about sheet explaining the purpose of this report as well as the version history of this Excel file. There is a GSTR-1 summary. If you filed one GSTR-1 return for the full financial year, this is how it will look. Again, these numbers are empty. Once we download data, there'll be values here. Similarly, here is the GSTR-3B summary. If you file a single GSTR-3B for the full financial year, this is how it will look. And now, after looking at the summary, there is a breakup by month. These are the various tables of GSTR-1 showing 1 month at a time. There are columns for the months, April to March of the financial year. Of course, for 2017 and 18, the relevant months are July 2017 to March 2018. Here are the tables of GSTR-1, and similarly, you have tables of GSTR. Similarly, you have that was tables of GSTR-3B, and here you have tables of GSTR-1. Again, so there is a difference here.
One moment. I think
so we were sharing the long window. This is our. Let me quickly go over these sheets again. So there is a GSTR summary sheet where we are showing if you are filing single GSTR-1 return for the full financial year, this is how the summary will look. And again here, there are two summaries that we are showing. One summary that we are calculated by GSTZen and the other summary reported by the government portal. Why is there a reason for these two different summaries? Is that the summary that is coming from the government portal only takes into account the summation of the liabilities reported in the tax return, doesn't take into account the actual date of the invoice. For example, you could have filed an invoice for 2017-18 in a later period, and then so here we are showing that particular summary in that particular financial year. So this will show you the liability of that financial year, not just the liability that you have reported in returns for that financial year. The other thing is that amendments, if you report a particular invoice for say 100 rupees and later amend it to 50 rupees, the net liability will be 50 rupees. So in the GSTZen summary, what you will see is the net liability. Whereas in the government portal, the summary you will see two numbers. One is you will see one number as 100 and you will see an amendment as 50, and you cannot exactly match the 100 and the 50, right? So similar to the GSTR-1 summary, there is a GSTR-3B summary for the full financial year. Firstly, we show table 3, the liability, outward supply, and then there is table 4, the inward supply, and then nil, exempt, and non-GST supplies, table 6, payment of taxes, and TDS credit. So this is the summary of 3B. Now, the next sheets we have breakup of GSTR-3B and GSTR-1 month by month. So this sheet is showing GSTR-1 month by month. Again, I have explained earlier that there are the different ways of calculating the summary. So we show that both for your reference, especially if there is a difference where a person has filed in a different filing period, an invoice, let us say for June, is filed in the return for August, you can compare that here, right? There is a sheet where we compare the relevant tables of GSTR-1 with the tables of GSTR-3B. So first is a section showing comparing domestic outward supply, and then there is a section comparing exports. So this is as far as outward supply is concerned. So there is a similar comparison for inward supply, where we are comparing tables of GSTR-2A with tables of GSTR-3B. What we recommend our users is to monitor this table and make sure that they are mostly in sync, or at least the cumulative credit that you have claimed is available in the government portal reported by your vendors. If not, reach out to them and make them file their returns. We have taken all this data and consolidated them into the annual return form. So let us now actually download data from the government portal and fill in this sheet, and then we can review the GSTR-9 form as calculated by GSTZen. Yeah. So let me start by downloading the GSTR-1 return summary into GSTZen. It should take about a few seconds. You can see this already. We have downloaded the details for the month from July all the way until March.
Yeah, so this is the advantage of using the GSTZen. If manually one have to do, we have to log in, click generate JSON, generate Excel, again wait for some moment. So then later download the 12 different files, again manually consolidate. It would be challenging.
Right. So in this table now we can see the relevant sections of GSTR-1 that were filed in the financial year 2017 and 18. So we simply take the we select all these sections. We have just now downloaded the summary, we don't need it. So we are selecting all these sections. We are also selecting GSTR-3B, GSTR-2A sections. I guess we don't need to do an ISD. Anyway, so the software is flexible enough. You can choose which data you want, select only that data, and you can download it from the government portal. So let us take a minute for this data to download. So in order to maintain confidentiality, we will not show Venu's data. So we'll show a sample report from GSTZen containing GSTR-9 auto-populated. And then let us
So whatever we have seen in the format of GSTR-9, we will be seeing the same data in the same data now, which is filled. So when I click on the download button, and the data gets now downloaded into the same format. So as Suriya has explained, that the data is available for 12 months in order to have consistency and comparison, though April, May, June would be nil. So from July to March. So if you notice on this click of this button, maybe it took max a minute's time. So all the data has been consolidated. So the data is not just the one value, it comes into GSTR-1, the table by table. If you notice, the data which we are seeing now is of table 4A, 4B, 4C. So we have downloaded the data of table 4A, 4B, 4C, all the details into this summary. Then 5A, so we have the details even table by table, so that we can use them for our internal reference or verification for comparing with the books of accounts. So we have GSTR-1 month over month, we have GSTR-3B month over month. But very important thing is we all know that there is a timing difference between GSTR-1 and GSTR-3B. And secondly, the data in GSTR-1 and GSTR-3B is not a straight comparison, because in GSTR-1 I have reported B2B separately, exports separately, B2C separately, B2C large, B2C small. So the reporting in GSTR-1 is little detailed, GSTR-3B is little condensed, and between month to month there would have been some difference. While I noticed that there are difference, this tool of GSTZen automatically also adjusts in terms of what is the difference. So there is a comparison between what is the value of GSTR-1 and what is the value which is there in GSTR-3B and what is the difference. So month over month we can know what is the difference in the data which is filed. The difference could be on account of taxable value, or it could be on account of taxes too. So between taxable value and taxes, whatever is the difference is gets reported in GSTR-1 versus GSTR-3B. Likewise, GSTR-1 versus GSTR-3B, the requirement is there in GSTR-9 table 8. What is the credit availed between GSTR-3B and GSTR-2A? So the tool would also give a comparison between what is the input tax credit which has been availed. So X is 3B, Y is R2A. What is the credit which is availed between GSTR 3B and GSTR 2A gets reported here. A very interesting and important point is table 9. So which is GSTR 9, sorry, not table 9. So this data, as I said, which is auto populated on the government portal, the data which is auto populated on the government portal is also available for download and view on the GSTZen. And the advantage of this on the GSTZen is this is not just the physical values which we are looking at. This also has a workings of what is the source of the data which from where this has been obtained. So we would be able to see line items of the values which are taken. When I am saying line items, when it comes to GSTR 2A, the 2A is available by supplier, by Justin, and for the month. And if the books data is entered, the books data and the portal amount, if whatever is the gap, whatever is required for the purpose of reporting into GSTR 9 table 8 is already available here. You may also notice if there is any data which is of forward charge, which is table 3 and table 5. This is the one for comparison for input tax credit. If there is any reverse charge liability, that is table 4, even that is available for viewing whether this input tax credit has been availed, whether these taxes have been discharged, is also made available on the GSTZen data. Whatever has been filed in GSTR-1, this data is also automatically downloaded by customer. So by customer, we would be knowing what is the turnover per month, and those who are good in Excel can easily make a pivot of this and can do automatically various types of reconciliations for them. You would also see that the GSTZen can get the details of financial year 2017-18 filed in 18-19. Now, if there is a data of financial year filed separately, even that data is available. The filing period, the filing month, automatically everything is captured and it gets reported. This is the advantage of using the GSTZen. Now I will come to GSTR-9 and we will spend some time in understanding how these values are reported. So if we notice in our earlier slide on table 4, part 2, we had some values reported. Some for a demo company, we had some values reported, and those values were reported in detail in each table wise. When it is reported in each table wise, 4A, 4B, 4C. The same data is available even in GSTZen Excel. The same data is available in GSTZen Excel. Each this is, yeah, each table wise. So the advantage of using the data in GSTZen is this data which is available table wise is can be editable. We can edit it and we can further see what is the data we would want to fill it. So in my explanation, I have explained what is the data that needs to be filled. Right now, the data which you are seeing is auto-filled. This can be edited. It's not that this is the one which you have to adopt. If you know for some reason this is not your total liability, your liability is different, or this is your liability but this is not fully paid, you think that some amount is paid in 17-18 and some amount is paid in 18-19, so that amount which is paid in 18-19, that gets reported in table 10 and 11. So the additional value would be reported here in the following tables. Now the Excel download is given as a view for the viewers to do a data entry, compare with the books of accounts before filing the annual return. Please note a very important thing to be noted: annual return, if filed once, cannot be filed again. You do not have an option of revising your annual return. So one has to be very careful to enter the values before submission. So we will also see live on the portal how do we do this, and let's move on to the portal.
Let us go back to the GSTR-9 page. Again, in the interest of confidentiality, we will use some dummy data, but that should explain things for you. So we are going here into the tax return page. We are going to now, we showed you the first step, which is to get data from the government portal. That will be there present in an Excel format for us to review. And this is what is the tables 4 to 16 auto-populated by GSTZen available here. There is also data that you can download from the government portal. This is the data that the portal GSTN, they themselves calculate and give it to you. This is also available. I'm not going to make this data available here in this demo since that is going to be real data. But assuming that that data is available, we will go and fill in the GSTR-9 form in GSTZen. Before doing that, let me also show you, you can, the same Excel that you took a look, you can now view it in PDF format. So this is the summary of.
Yeah, so this data, what you are seeing is a PDF, is on the tiles which has been made available. So when you click on that fetch data, the GSTZen will automatically fetch the details, whatever which is there in the government portal, and fill it into this PDF and will present it back to us.
Right. So now let us go to the form and fill in.
So you would be seeing all the tables that is necessary for filing the returns between part 2 to part 6. So all the parts, part 2 to part 6, which is required for filing, is visible. We can directly navigate to each of the steps. And before we navigate, we can see the details, what is there, which is there as calculated by the government portal, what is there, which is calculated by GSTZen. If you are correcting and entering some values, you will be able to see all the values.
Right here. So let us navigate. Let's quickly show how to navigate to various parts. So if you click here, you can directly go back go to table 5. You can view and fill in the details of table 5. We go back to the top of the page. You can click table 8 and so on. So this is how you navigate between the tables of the form. And as just now mentioned, there are 3 sets of values. One is the value calculated by the government portal. In the interest of confidentiality, we are not showing this data right now. And so here is value calculated by GSTZen. We have just populated this with some dummy values. Right, so let's say this is the taxable values, 101 rupees, IGST is 99 rupees, and so on. And so this is the value to be entered by you. As you can notice, the values that is calculated by GSTZen and or the government portal is available for you to enter and overwrite in this form. So if you feel the value 101 is not suitable for you, you want to larger turnover, make it, you can enter your data here. Before saving the form, let me just show you the form itself has calculations built in. So the subtotal H, which is the summation of A to G, is added up here, and it shows in row number H1668. Or for example, if I change some value here, it will reflect here accordingly. Whereas the original values, which was the starting point for filling the data, that is fully read only. That is not going to change. You can use it as a reference. Both the government portal values and the GSTZen calculator values you can use as a reference, and you can continue adding, editing the form. I think tables 4 and 5 are simple to edit. There is not much to explain.
Though it is simple, but that is a very critical table, because after filing of GSTR-9 is where the assessing officer considers this would be as your final return, and during the assessments this is the one which would be considered for the books of accounts and versus the annual return. So the data entry is pretty simple. Before submitting, one has to be very careful whether this value has been reconciled with your the filings, which is GSTR 1 and 3B, whether the taxes have been paid. In case if the taxes are not paid, the option of paying the differential tax through DRC 03 is also available. So one has to take a very proper look as to what is the value which is getting reported.
Let me go to the table 6, where there is a breakup that is required, and I'll let Venu explain how to deal with these, the breakup of these sections.
Right. So when it comes to the table 6, as I said, the 6A is a auto-calculated field of the government portal, which is GSTR 2A. Now, GSTR table 4A of Form 3B. So for the 9 months, whatever is the GSTR 3B which has been filed, how much credit has been taken, IGST, CGST, cess, is reported in 6A. Now, the registered taxpayer has to file this by segregating these credits into various categories. What were the categories which we have to segregate? If we notice, these categories were 6A, B, C. When the credit was availed, it was availed as import of goods, import of services, input tax credit on account of reverse charge liability, ISD credits, all other credits. So the credit has been availed in this fashion. Since the credit is availed in this fashion, the reporting requirement in GSTR-9 is also in the same manner. So in 9, the regular credit, all other credits, which is 4A5, gets reported in 6B with a bifurcation between input capital goods and input services. So one has to do a data entry. Now we know that there is a credit of 150 availed in IGST. It could be say 20 of 6B and maybe 6C another 30, and let us take the import of goods as 100. So for the ease of our thing, I am making small corrections, and as I said, this is a report which is easily correctable. So I have a total input tax credit of 150. The input tax credit of 150 is also reconciling, which my 6A is matching with my 6I. Very in very few instances this there would be a difference because on account of reversed and reclaim. But however, this ideally this should match, and the 650 150 is further bifurcated between input capital goods and input services. If 20 is my regular credit, of my 20 I have to now identify how much is my input goods, how much is my capital goods, and how much is my input services. So one has a requirement of segregating of the input tax credits into input capital goods and input services. This is the one challenging job of the registered taxpayer while filing GSTR 9. So that is where Mr. Surya was mentioning that GSTR 4 is a very simple table. Yes, of course, since the data is auto populated and it is available, it is definitely pretty much a simple table. But however, when it comes to input tax credit, it is definitely little complicated since the credit or the data is apparently not available. So one way, okay, definitely it does not serve the 100% the purpose of it. But since the GSTZen, when you download the GSTZen report, GSTZen has given the details of GSTR-2A input tax credit by vendor. So one already knows how much of the input tax credit, assuming if this credit hypothetically is matching with the input tax credit which you have availed. So my the total credit in my GSTR-2A, if you have to see, you can apply a simple pivot and you can see what is the credit by vendor. How much is the credit which is there in the portal can be easily noticed, and one can apply a simple pivot saying that okay, this is the credit which is available on the portal, and can I segregate this credit which is there on the portal by vendor wise. Now the advantage of doing by vendor wise, you can know, can I segregate my input tax credit into input service and capital goods. So you know the total input tax credit is so much, and can I segregate, okay, maybe this we can say this is okay as a input goods, something can be input services. You have various vendors, you can easily segregate these details using, you know, looking at your books of accounts, something might be capital goods, something might be input services. So you can apply a simple small VLOOKUP and pivot, you would be able to segregate and try to arrive at a bifurcation between what is that which can be reported in table 6, which is 6B, 6C, 6D, inputs, input services, and capital goods. This is how one needs to report the bifurcation of the data. Moving further to table 7, which is on account of reversal of input tax credit. Please note, reversal of input tax credit is manually reversed. There is no way you can see why the reversal has happened. If you notice in the reporting of GSTR 3B, when it is reported in GSTR 3B, this is reported as reversal on account of Rule 42 and others. There is no bifurcation available with the government portal on the government portal or on the 3B how the reversal has happened. So that is where now whatever the reversals made during the financial year, one has to now allocate it based on various rules. The rules I have explained. why there would be why one would reverse it. So we have various rules for reasons for reversal. So applying those maybe not paid to the vendor within 180 days, ISD credit notes or common credits. So on the portal you will be finding this rule number 37, 39, 42, 43. So against each of this rule you have to manually key in how much of your summation of GSTR 3B, Table 4B reversal for the financial year 17-18 attributes to the available rules. Once you do the data entry of the reversals, the net ITC available for utilization is auto calculated. The total ITC reversed, the net ITC available for reversal is auto calculated by the GSTZen portal. There is nothing one needs to do it. Once it is reversed, we have to move to table 8, where it is an explanation of the reconciliation between GSTR 2A and what is the input tax credit which is availed, which is 6B and 6H. So the feature we have on the GSTZen is for reconciling this.
Sorry to interrupt. So I have a question myself. So table 8 row number B is mentioned as the sum total of 6B and 6H.
Correct.
So is it just a summation or is it a value that we can change?
Yeah, so the 6B and 6H is not an editable field. It is a data which it is available on the portal. What I have entered in my GSTR-9 table 6, whatever the data entry which is done, this value, the summation of 6B which is there in the on the portal, and my summation of 6H is auto calculated and it is presented for reconciliation. So this is an auto calculated field and it cannot be editable. Yeah. So moving further, now we have understood the details up to table 8. The only point one needs to know in table 8 is the data of 6B and 6H is auto-populated. We cannot edit this data. Right now we are seeing a dummy data, so all these values are visible. But this is something which is not an editable data, and the data which you have already entered into in 6B and 6H would be available for non-editing. But one has to be very careful in filling the data in 8C. 8C is about input tax credit of the previous financial year which has not been availed in the previous financial year. Now, for example, my the input tax credit available in 2A is 500, and my data which is there in 6B and 6H is 350. Then I have taken an input tax credit of 100 in the subsequent period. So I would have not taken some credit. So whatever I have not taken the credit, either it would be available but not availed. Maybe a 20 is available but not availed, and something is eligible but I have is 30 rupees is an ineligible. So the system would auto calculate what is not available, what is not eligible. What is the importance of the fields 8E and 8F? 8E and 8F, as per the government portal, it would be marked as lapsed. So, which means the credit either when not availed or the credit is ineligible, it gets marked as lapsed. So much of the credit would get lapsed. So again, one needs to be careful in filling the values between 8E and 8F.
So let's move on to table 9. Table 9 summarizes the tax payable as well as tax paid both through cash and through ITC the financial year. Paid through cash will be auto-populated again both by the government portal and by GSTZen. We are not making it editable here. Since it's dummy data, you're not seeing the values here. The only ideally you should not be editing tax payable also. This value will be auto-populated with whatever was your total tax payable, net payable from 3B.
Yeah, whatever has been declared. So, but if you notice the portal, you would see the tax payable details are made editable, because for some reason, if you might feel that you have wrongly reported a tax payable, the correct tax payable, they have given an opportunity for you to report it. But whatever is paid cannot be changed because so much has been paid. So the tax paid and through cash or ITC is intact, but the tax payable details is definitely an editable field.
We'll move on to tables 10 to 13, where you are declaring invoices reported after the financial year, after the end of the financial year. So after March 30, or starting from April 2018 returns, any invoices or amendments that are reported pertaining to the previous financial year, that will come here. This also will be auto-populated. This is not auto-populated by the portal.
Yeah, portal also auto-populates this information. If you have filed anything in GSTR-1 of 2018-19 pertaining to the values of 17-18, it could be two things: either an addition where you have entered an invoice newly, or you would have entered an amendment, which is you have reported it as 100. That 100 you have amended upward or downward, or maybe for 100 to 120 or 80, any of that amendment would get auto calculated and reported by the portal here. And the tax payable and paid on account thereof is a manual data entry, where the user would do a data entry, the registered taxpayer would do a data entry, whether this differential tax on account of 10 and 11, it could be again upward or a downward. Erroneously higher tax has been reported earlier, that has been corrected now, so it can be positive or a negative figure. Both would be submitted in table 14. Moving on to other particulars, as I said, I would come back on to the other particulars. So the other particulars is table 16, 17, 18 and 19. What is there in the other particulars? By now we understood the majority of the information that needs to be filed in GSTR-9. Apart from that, there is an expectation for the registered taxpayer to furnish other information needed necessary for the assessing officer for the assessment and other purposes. So one of the critical information is on refunds and demands. When we look at refunds, the expectation of the refunds is whatever the refunds which have been claimed during the period is reported in 15A. Of the refunds claimed, whatever is the refunds sanctioned is reported in 15B. Refunds which are rejected is reported in 15C, and refunds which are still pending in the March are reported in 15D. And when we are talking about refunds claimed, this would also include refunds on account of exports with payment of tax, because shipping bill itself, when you're exporting, that itself is like a refund application form. Even that would also get reported. When it comes to the demands raised is in 15E. Of the demands raised, how much have been taxes paid is reported in 15F. How much of the taxes are paid in are still pending is reported in 15G. The points to be noted here is, we know the earlier assessments are still going on: VAT, service tax and excess. The values to be reported in 15E are only demands of GST, and there are various show cause notices which have received, or ASMT 10 would have received, asking an explanation difference between 2A versus 3B, or 3B versus GSTR-1. All those differences are only a show cause notice, they are not a demands. What to be reported are only demands. And whenever a demand is paid, okay, please note that some demands would have been paid using DRC challan, so everything has to be looked into and filled this section. For some reasons the demands are paid, the SSC has chosen to go for an appeal, even though the demand has been paid on a protest basis and appeal has been filed. the same has to get reported in this section. Moving on to a very important tables, other information, supplies received from composition taxpayer, deemed supplies under 143, that is goods sent for job work but not received within 1 year, and goods sent on approval basis not returned as per section 31 subsection 7. So whatever the details which are required to be furnished, and in some cases this would become a supply and liability would arise, there is a very reporting of it. So this is of table 16 and 17, and we have to provide only the actual data, and ITC 04 is required to be matched when filing this information. There are two tables on HSN wise, which is HSN wise outward summary and inward summary. Very important data for the matching of what is the data which is reported in GSTR-1, GSTR-9, where HSN wise we report it. This is little challenging to report. However, the new notification 74 has gave a relaxation. The reporting of this data in this table is required only if an individual HSN constitutes more than 10% of the total value, then those HSNs have to be reported. Now, you would have a choice of reporting as much as you possible. There is no mandatory, there is no stoppage if you choose to report more HSN. Couple of points you have to be very careful of is between GSTR-1 and GSTR-9, there is an additional reporting column called rate of tax. The rate of tax was not available in the GSTR-1 reporting, but now you would be reporting the rate of tax in GSTR-9. When you are reporting rate of tax, so the system also does a computation between the taxable value, rate of tax, and the tax amount. So you have to ensure these three values are matching and there are no differences in it. Like in outward summary, there is a requirement of inward summaries reporting. Even the inward supplies HSN wise have to be reported. Even here, the same relaxation is given. The reporting is required only if the value of the HSN exceeds 10% of the total inward value. Now, when we are reporting HSN wise, please note we can report it online in the data entry form if the HSNs you are reporting are 100 in line items. If you choose to enter all your HSNs and the number of line items are more than 100, again you will not be able to use the online portal. So we have a simple form in the GSTZen in filing of this data. Suriya, can you?
Yeah, so let me go over that. So, assuming that you have filled all the details here for from tables 4 through 16, you can click on Save Form. So this form will get saved here into GSTZen. Just to be clear, this doesn't go into the government portal yet. You have only saved your working here, these tables. You can come back and correct it at any point in time. Again, at any point in time, you can compare the details between the value in the government portal with the values entered by you. And as we showed earlier, it's available in a PDF format, so you can print it out and review it. Coming to tables 17 and 18, we have provided Excel upload facility. So at this moment, there is no data here in these tables. So let us go to the page where we can upload the Excel, the data in Excel format. I'm going to take a sample data sample format that we provide at GSTZen. You are free to use your own Excel workings. The only requirement is that these details be there: the HSN code, quantity, unit, tax rate, and taxable value and tax amounts. So here is some sample data consisting of 3 rows. I will upload this data into GSTZen. So the file which I just now downloaded. Right, yeah. So this is the file. I'll drag and drop the file. So the uploader asks us to choose which sheet we are importing data from. So we will import it from this sheet. If you are using GSTZen's default template, the column headers will already be mapped for you. Otherwise, you can provide which column in your file, like column A, B, or C, contains the HSN code, which column contains the quantity, and so on. Let's wait a minute. So this has just now uploaded. You can take a look at the summary, match the summary with your file, make sure that GSTZen has read your file correctly. Once you're satisfied, confirm and save those entries. So now let us.
Yeah. So the way which has been imported, it can be used for even inward summary also, and there is no restriction since this is an Excel file. You can import as much as the data which you need. And if you notice, this data is now available on the GSTZen. The table 17 is available. So we can go back to GSTR-9 and even the save this data also.
So you can see that this data was saved just now. And similarly, we can do the same, repeat the same process for inward supplies. And after doing all this, you will have the entire GSTR-9 data available in GSTZen, ready for you
For filing.
to filing to the government portal. So we are providing data in two formats. One is to download the returns data as JSON. If you click this button, you will get a JSON file. Let me just do that. So you will get a JSON file. You can take this file and upload it into the GSTR-9
Portal, government portal.
This facility is not available right now.
Maybe we can just show them how it can be done. So let me log in to the portal and let me show it to you. So once you log in, you have this annual return, and you can click on the annual return, and you will find this option prepare online and prepare offline. Currently, the prepare offline mode is not available. So once you have the JSON which is downloaded, the JSON which is downloaded from the GSTZen, so this portion we have downloaded the JSON, it which is downloaded here. This JSON file which is downloaded can be again dragged and dropped, uploaded back onto the government portal using the prepare offline. So once you post the details into the government portal, again the same data will be available for the viewing mode. So one can view it and file the details. Moving back to.
So the other way you can file the return is to upload the data directly into the government portal. If you press this button, the data will be sent into the government portal. This is the similar process that we follow for all our return filing at GSTZen, GSTR-1 and GSTR-3B. So this data will go directly to the government portal, and you can then digitally sign the return. Once you have verified that data is correct in the government portal, check their PDF, check our PDF, and so on. Once you are sure that everything is correct, you can digitally sign your return. Once signed, you cannot modify the return. So please be careful while doing that.
Yeah. So as it is mentioned, the GSTR-Zen, GST-Zen reports are handy for comparing. But very important point to note is once the data is filed, returns are filed. As long as it is not submitted and filed, you can only it is in the save mode. You can correct any number of times. You can correct on GSTZen and again resubmit to the government portal, or on the portal directly you can correct it. But once you file it, you have no option of correcting it. Once the data is filed, the correction of the GSTR-9 is not possible, nor you can file a revised return. The next thing you should be also be careful about is this data which is filed should be signed electronically, whether it is digitally signed using DSC. Also, the small SS's EVC filing is also made available. So both the options are available for filing. And if the returns are filed late, there is also a late fee for payment of the tax. Now we have some queries which are coming up, so we will take up the queries. And any of you have any queries, either you can put it on the chat, or you can put it on the YouTube link. We are available to answer the questions. So let's take up the questions that have come so far. So one of the question which I am seeing here is, so a user is mentioning that I have wrongly entered an invoice in SEZ as with payment of tax. However, it is without payment of tax. Can the same be amended? Again, the answer is up to 31st March 2019. So ideally, the due date for corrections or amendments was only September. Up to 31st March 2019, the option of amending the returns which have been filed is already given. So this data can be definitely amended in GSTR1. But when it comes to GSTR3B, for making corrections, we have to refer the notification, the circular 26/2017, which gives an option of how do we correct an error reported in 3B into the subsequent month returns. Then we have the next question coming up.
Yeah, so someone has filed nil returns through the year, but has a late fee for 3B during the financial year. Can they file a nil GSTR-9?
Okay, so someone who have filed a nil return in terms of GSTR1, but
And
they
3B.
have they have filed the 3B late. So only once the nil return can be filed only if the GSTR-9 do not have any liability. Now, no liability means it has to be any kind of liability. So even the late fee is one of the liability. So in GSTR 9, the table 9 would get filled with the late fees and the late fees paid. So then in simple, it is not a nil return. A regular GSTR 9 return would get filed.
We have heard questions about the HSN summary, right? So what you are telling us, you only have to report up till anything that is above 10%.
10%.
Right? So does it specify at what level? Is this at the chapter level or number of digits? Is the number of digits of HSN required dependent on
Yes.
the turnover?
Yeah. So the HSN, actually, if you look at HSN is in India, HSN is a 8-digit number, and first 2 digits denote the chapter, and the next 2 digits are heading, subheading, and the entry. In terms of the reporting requirement for the HSN is if the turnover is up to 1.5 crores, there is no requirement of reporting HSN. Since there is no requirement of reporting any HSN, the table 17 and 18 can go as nil. But if the turnover is more than 1.5 crores and less than 5 crores, the reporting of HSN is at 2 digits, the first 2 digits. So if any first 2 digits of the total the turnover is exceeding the 10%, then at the chapter level we have to report the first 2 digits. If the turnover is more than 5 crores, then the reporting requirement is at a 4-digit level one has to look at. So they would be looking at the HSN reporting requirement, and then accordingly they will be reporting whether 2 digits or 4 digits.
Got it. Are there any other specific questions during this webinar? Okay. Looks like we are reaching the end of the questions. A few of the viewers have asked about what is the cost of filing GSTR-9 on GSTZen. Please get in touch through us through support. Depends upon who you are and volume of data and so on. Depends on the number of invoices and so on. So please get in touch. We'll provide you with a quote. Do we have anything else?
Yeah, so there are questions still coming up. I know it's a new subject, new thing. So you can always contact us all the registered customers can contact to the chat helpline, and there is a support number, so you can reach to us on the support number too.
Sure. Yeah. So reach to us. Let me just show that on the screen right now.
One second.
So on all pages of GSTZen software, you have ways on how you can reach us out. You can either email us at support@gstzen.in, you can call us at this number, or you can click on the chat button and there'll be a window here. You can chat with us right away. We'll do our best to answer you. And so we have reached the end of the webinar. Thank you, Venu, for sharing your knowledge and insights.
Yes.
We look forward to seeing both Venu and our viewers on other topics.
Yes.
We are planning a series of webinars in the future.
Sure. Thank you, Suriya, and thank you, GSTZen, for having the opportunity to discuss and share the knowledge. And I'm sure the viewers would be getting a lot of questions as the time passes, and we can take their questions as we.
So, thank you.
Thank you.